consultants like to have because it allows us to hang our hats on something. If this were asbestos, I could do an air sample in this room according to what the EPA tells the protocol for the air sample collection. I can analyze it. If that air sample comes back below a concentration of 0.01 parts per cubic centimeter, the EPA and OSHA says it's fine for work and children that enter this room. If it's above that level, it's bad. So that it's something to hang your hat on. With mold, there is nothing to hang your hat on, and the reason there isn't any regulation is because mold is everywhere and it affects people differently. So with that in mind, I want to give you an idea of what we do. We've provided environmental testing, consultation, and training in public and commercial building clients, primarily universities and school districts. This is what we focus on. This is our specialty since 1988. We are approved by the EPA and the state of Michigan to provide a wide range of environmental training courses. But again, that's based on regulation. There isn't any for mold. Although Sergio and I used to put on presentations back in the 90s on this stuff, but again, it was outside of government agency regulation. We provided environmental training through the Michigan School Business Officials since 1988, including the EPA's Tools for Schools IAQ program. Many of you, I'm sure, have Googled stuff. The EPA does have a guidance document that is used by schools. It's called Tools for Schools, and we were selected by the EPA to put on that training through the Michigan School Business Officials, and that was back in the mid to late 1990s. To give you an indication of who we work for, the University of Michigan is our largest client. We worked at Oakland University, we worked at Eastern Michigan University, a number of universities up north. We worked at Michigan State, we worked at Grand Valley, and so forth. You can see just in Oakland County, our current school district clients. We worked in a lot of schools throughout the state of Michigan, from the basis of southern Michigan all the way up to Alpena Public Schools and Sheboygan area schools and so forth. So this is what we do for a living. We provide indoor air quality consultation, testing, and training to our clients. We've been providing our service to Rochester Community Schools for 33 years. We started working in here in 1989 and have been working and providing environmental consultation and testing and training to this district since then. So with that in mind, I want to go over the general information regarding indoor air quality. It's interesting because this first statement is a quote from what is called ASHRAE, which is an acronym for the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers. They establish our ventilation standards. They are who tells us how much air should be flowing, how much outdoor air should be coming in through their ventilation standards. So they establish their guidelines for these gentlemen, the construction managers that follow in the construction of the buildings. They have a quote in their definition section of their ventilation standard that says acceptable indoor air quality, or acceptable IQ, is defined as air in which there are no contaminants at harmful concentrations as determined by cognizant authorities, and with which a substantial majority, 80% or more, of the people exposed do not express dissatisfaction. So what that means is that ASHRAE says you can have 19% of the people in the building complaining about air quality, and in theory still have acceptable indoor air quality, with an understanding that they say, you can't satisfy everyone all the time. But the fact is that no one in this industry would even contemplate this. If you have one person who has an issue with indoor quality within the building, we got an indoor air quality issue. Because, let's face it, we all know that if one person complains and if you do nothing about it, you're going to have additional. So that this definition means nothing in this industry. The fact is, when someone is concerned about the quality of their air, that's an issue, period. And it has to be addressed. Now, according to the EPA, there are really 4 factors that influence and impact indoor air quality. Number one is pollutant sources. You have to have a pollutant for there to be a potential issue. Pollutants can come from outdoor sources, everything from auto bus emissions, construction activities outside, even just simple maintenance activities such as mowing the lawn. If people are allergic, that gets sucked into the building, and that can even create an issue. You can see biological contaminants, because the fact is that mold is living, it's everywhere. And you know what, even in the 90s, there was an issue with teachers who would come down with headaches at around 3 to 3:30, and there was no pattern to it. Well, it was the buses that would come up, and at that time, they would idle for literally a half hour in front of the building. And it was, honestly, the direction of the wind, literally the way in which the wind was going, whether it would impact the complainants inside of that. You have indoor sources, the HVAC system, which is a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, the renovation contaminants, even plants and animals, pets in classrooms. I mean, you know, if people are allergic or hypersensitive, you know, don't forget, these are odor-generating animals also. Mold and mildew growth, building components and furnishings. You know, I explained to the staff yesterday. One of the things I have a vivid memory of is I read this report regarding new car smell. You know, new car smell. People get deodorizers, new car smell. New car smell are volatile organic compounds. They are the off-gassing of the chemicals made to off-gas and be impacted. Is it much? No, but it is it. Special use areas. Schools have a lot of special use areas. You know, the gymnasium, the cafeteria. There's a lot of areas where you have odor generation. The HVAC system can be the cause of indoor air quality issues or the solution to indoor air quality issues. It can be both. And of course, it helps to have the filters, and that's what helps, it aids in reducing the amount of contaminants in the building. Pollutant pathways. How does the pollutant source get to the occupancy? It could be through pressure differentials, or if you have, for instance, if you have positive pressure in the tunnel system or negative pressure in the classroom, then that would impact what you're breathing in possibly from the tunnel system. And then you have building occupants, which you have to have, you know, for there to be an issue, usually someone has to complain. And you know what, EPA has a number of common symptoms that they refer to that are associated with indoor air quality. You know, I mean, headaches and upper respiratory ailments and itchy, scratchy eyes and so forth. They find a lot of them some common. So, with that general indoor air quality, we come to mold. What is it? It's a biological material that can grow on and sometimes within objects, can cause discoloration, odor problems, deteriorate building materials, and lead to health problems such as asthma episodes and allergic reactions in susceptible individuals. We know that mold has an impact on negative impact on certain individuals, of course. Mold spores are almost always present in outdoor and indoor air, and almost all surfaces can provide nutrients to support growth. If moisture is present, mold can thrive and reproduce. And we'll talk about that a lot in a couple of moments. Certain species of mold can be particularly harmful to human exposure. As I indicated, there are no regulatory standards. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do, before I get into what happened in this room, in this building, is I want to explain to you that EPA has 10 things they want you to know about mold. And here they are. Number one, potential health effects and symptoms associated with mold exposure include allergic reactions, asthma, and other respiratory complaints. Number two, there is no practical way to eliminate all mold and mold spores in the indoor environment. The way to control the mold growth is to control moisture. Number three, if mold is a problem, you must clean up the mold and eliminate the source of moisture. Number four, you need to fix the source of the water problem or leak to prevent mold growth and prevent it coming back in a week, a month, a year. They also talked about reducing humidity inside the buildings. Again, you see the common denominator here, right? Venting the bathrooms, using air conditioners, dehumidifying, using ventilation, using exhaust fans. Number 6, clean and dry any damp or wet building materials and furnishings within 24 hours to prevent mold growth. That's what the EPA says. You know, it's interesting because, you know, since I've been doing this since 1986, in 1986, the vast majority of school buildings had hard flooring, floor tile. It was asbestos floor tile, but it was floor tile. You have carpet in elementary schools, and it's very difficult to keep it dry. I mean, think about, there are elementary schools that have carpeting in cafeterias and in the hallways. Well, how can you possibly keep that dry 24 hours? It's not dry from you know, mid-October through the end of the school year. So it's very difficult when you think about that, and that's why EPA sometimes, you know, they say do what you need to do, but they encourage for use of something other than carpet. Clean mold off hard surfaces and completely dry absorbing materials such as ceiling tiles that are molding may need to be replaced. Number 8 is prevent and reduce the potential for condensation on cold surfaces such as windows, piping, exterior walls, roofs, and floors by adding insulation. 9, in areas where there is a perpetual moisture problem, do not install carpet. Okay, this is the EPA, this is not me, but I don't necessarily disagree. And finally, number 10 is molds can be found almost anywhere. They can grow on virtually any substrate, provided moisture is present. So what you realize when you look at that is obviously water infestation and moisture intrusion is what the issue is when you look at situations where mold is causing problems indoors. That's what this is about. And you will see that the recommendations made to the school district, that we made to the school district when we found out about the level of water infestation actually coincides with these 10 things. EPA says to reduce mold growth in large buildings, reduce indoor humidity, if that's possible, inspect buildings for signs of mold, moisture, leaks, or spills, respond promptly when signs of mold or leaks are present, and prevent moisture condensation. Floor and carpet cleaning. Okay, so that gives you a basis. Now let me tell you what is happening here. The school district had done actually 10 separate samplings for mold this building since 2018. You can see we did it in 2018, then May, June, and September, and going through to October. We were requested by the district to come in and do mold air sampling in certain rooms. So we would come in, we would do the mold air sampling in certain rooms, and we would leave. We didn't actually do indoor air quality investigations of the building because we were instructed to come in and collect samples and have them analyzed for mold rooms. So these are a summary of the results, and here's how this works. It's called Aerostep Sample, and it's a cassette with we use an air sampling pump, and we run it for 5 minutes indoors and 5 minutes outdoors. So we do an outdoor sample and do indoor samples. Why? Since there are no regulations, we need to compare them to something. The outdoor sample is a good thing to compare it to because it's hard to get the inside of the building that much cleaner than the outside of the building, although it can be done, certainly, and we see the effects and impacts here. So this is identified as a concentration of mold in counts per cubic meter, which are basically, it's a calculation between the sampling volume and the amount of spores that they identify. So with that in mind, like for instance, October 8th, we found 5,110 counts per cubic meter on the outdoor air, and the indoor air ranged from 10 to 250 counts per cubic meter. Now I gotta tell you this, This is there are some very serious limitations to doing air sampling because it is just a snapshot of time, and a lot of it is the consideration of what's on the outside, what's happening. All right, these results sound great, which they are. All right, you see, they're in the thousands outside, and in the hundreds, if that, on the inside. Now, the consideration is, if I would take an air sample in the middle of December, all right, when it's 10 degrees out, I might see that flip a little, or I might see a completely different result. I'm sure I would, because there's going to be a heck of a lot less on the outdoor area. And pretend the mold is dormant, and that's arriving at dormant, and on the inside, I might see a little more. Okay? That's one of the considerations. So, when we found, on September 10th, you can see again, 24,000, and the counts on the indoor were substantially, way lower. When we looked at September 29th, we found on the outdoor 22,520, on the indoor range from 230 to 930. However, what we found on there, we found what's called Stachybotrys on 3 of the air samples that were collected. Stachybotrys, usually Stachybotrys carcardum, is what is considered black mold. Okay? So that when we see black mold, that usually means that there is going to be a water-related issue there. And Stachybotrys doesn't throw off their spores easily. So when we see it in the air, we get concerned about that. So one of the considerations was, we immediately informed the school district that we found this, and we told them that the immediate solution, let's clean those rooms up. And because at that time, I found out that the school district had hired structure tech to come in and address leak. So that I indicated to the school district to clean those applicable rooms, the 3 rooms that weekend, and we went in on Monday morning and collected samples, and the outdoor sample was 88,000. It doesn't matter what outdoor versus indoor, because it was substantially higher in the outdoors than the indoors, but there was no Stachybotrys identified in those samples. All right? So, we had additional samples performed. On September 29th, a tapeless sample of discoloration on the east cinder block wall near the window of room 12. It tested rare for mold, the presence of mold. My understanding is that Casey was involved prior to us collecting the sample and performed a cleanup of that area. In fact, I think he actually scraped some of the paint off to get as much as he could. So that it came back as rare. But the fact of the matter is that something's causing water infestation or moisture. We did an adhesion sample, a tapeless sample.
And you're saying it's rare. You were not
Yeah, we did identify the fungus, and there were two funguses were identified as rare. I got that. Those specific questions, depend. Wait until the end, and we can address that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike. Please.
I think Dr. Sanders, Terry, first of all, can you explain?
Yes.
I know this people don't really understand the science. Can you explain how those are rare and high?
Well, it's the amount that they're identifying on it, and that way they can tell whether you're looking at. EPA doesn't say. This is the well, it's a direct microscopic examination is what they're using for.
Another issue with masonry products and moisture is what's called effervescence. And basically what it is a chemical reaction between the moisture and the salts that are in the masonry product itself. So that chemical reaction comes out, and you can see it on buildings all the time, masonry buildings. A lot of people, I think, probably the most common place you want to see it is in your basement. If you have a block facing wall, moisture from outside starts leaking through, you'll see bubbling, you'll see white, most of the time it's white, but it can be brown, yellow, green sometimes. Those products are just chemical reactions between the water and the salts that are in the masonry product. They're not harmful, you clean them off. Sometimes what happens is people try to use water to clean it off, and it actually creates more of it because the moisture is what's causing the problem to begin with. So you just have to understand there are differences between things. Kerry would say mold can grow on masonry, but only really not on the masonry itself, on the products that are on the masonry.
From the paint to the organic particulate, the land you need something organic to survive that was once eaten. Okay, thank you. We got the results, and I think that they're going to be shared.
Yeah, can you buzz Carrie? I don't, yeah, we can look it up, but.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, so what Carrie's gonna tell us over and over again is mold exists everywhere. So the most important thing to do is remediate it quickly, which Casey acted. He got rid of it, and if anyone would like to see room 12, I'm happy to show it to you. That area has been addressed and repainted, and we're in good shape there. But again, I think we gotta be very careful. I cannot stand up here and guarantee you that we're never gonna have a water leak in a commercial building like this. I can't guarantee you that mold will not exist in this building, because what the experts tell me is mold exists everywhere. So I just want to be clear about that. If you're looking for a guarantee tonight that we're never gonna have a roof leak, or we're never gonna have the existence of mold in the building, I can't give that to you, and I wanna be directly honest about it. These folks are here to happy to answer your questions. If you have something more technical that you'd like to discuss, we're happy to do that if people want to hear it. But again, the key thing for us to do was to act quickly. So we cleaned, with the advice of the experts, we cleaned the room, we cleaned the carpet with antimicrobial, and with their recommendation, we tested again. Well, yeah, I don't want to sidetrack this too much, but we're going to have a difficult decision to make, right? Because Eric, his suggestion would be to get rid of all soft surfaces anywhere in a school. Well, that sounds great until you talk about reading a book to the kindergartners on the carpet, right? And when he says that doesn't mean get a tile floor and then put a carpet on it. It means to not have any. Or a rug, I'm sorry. It means to not have any soft surfaces. So as we discuss this, and Casey will be communicating this as we work with the teachers, we're going to try to figure out how to move forward with some consensus, because there's even different instructional philosophies that they say, no, I want my carpet. But that also includes folks that, if they have a couch in their classroom, if they have bean bags in their classroom, am I right? Yeah, so I think the point of the matter is we've got to work on this as a team, right? We've got to work to consensus. And I know you're getting frustrated, sir, because I'm not technical on this. And yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're getting. second, though, I mean, I appreciate that. Would everyone agree to that? And kind of have Carrie close out here and then move on? I'm fine with that.
Can I just tell what the recommendations are?
As a hygienist, or is this just reading EPA or?
No, this is at the high end.
Okay, great. I want to hear the hygienist recommendation with clearance and set up protocol.
All right, well, the protocol's in the process of being set up, but this is the recommendations that we made subsequent to having the Stagiobaccus show up and finding out that there were multiple leaks in the building. Structure tech is to conduct a thorough evaluation to determine the source and locations of water infestation and or moisture intrusion. The district to have these sources corrected. That's step one, because you can't start replacing stuff or doing stuff until the water issues are addressed. So that's what that is. Number two, the district to identify and remove or clean all building components that have been impacted by the water or moisture issues. I know they're in the process of doing that, including but not limited to evaluation of the ceiling tiles. Next, subsequent to the removal and cleaning of all applicable building components, supplies, mobile air sampling could be conducted as a clearance process for that, for the activities that occurred. But the fact of the matter is, for instance, the school district asked us to continue to do air sampling, and I told them no. And the reason I told them no is, there's no sense of doing air sampling. You have issues that need to be addressed. You have you have to make some decisions on the flooring, and you have to dry this building out so it doesn't become a growth and or amplification site for mold. And so you're right. It is pretty basic understanding to do that. I will tell you though, and I know that we're not going to do questions now, but he indicated Stachybotrys, and you mentioned it scares me to see. I don't want to see Stachybotrys, and I'm glad it's gone. But I will tell you something. I don't want anyone to be in an unsafe environment. I personally had to close high school down. Google it. I was on CNN. We're closing Saline High School down. I closed Southfield Public School High School, Southfield High School down because of environmental issues for 2 weeks in the late 1980s. So, and I think that this issue is solvable. I think that the school district, from what I understand, and you're going to hear from Structure Tech, is in the process of doing exactly, I believe, what you want. So, there's nothing in the information that we have that identifies room 12 as being unsafe, or any room in this building being unsafe. Correct. No. Right. No, you're right. One of the other things that we're doing is that you brought up the carpet, so let me explain. We have selected 7 rooms that will we're going to lift up the carpet in the worst areas of the water damage. We're going to see if there's any visible signs of mold. If there are, we will collect table of samples of it. If there aren't, I'm going to take a piece of that carpet, a small piece, and we're going to put it in the laboratory. Now let me explain something. My company doesn't do the analysis. We're not microbiologists. We send that out to a company called EMSL, Enzel Analytical. They are, I believe, the 3rd largest, don't quote me, but I believe they're the 3rd largest environmental lab in the country. And they have offices all over, and they've had an office here in the state of Michigan since the mid-1980s. That's who we use for this type of analysis. So what they would do is they would swab the backside of the carpet, put it on slides, and use direct microscopic examination to see if there's anything there. So that has been decided. But at this point, I'd like to go ahead and do as I think you all want, and turn it over to Sergio Pages with Structure Tech. Lori, have the latest for sure, the one that I sent you. Thanks. Okay, well, thank you. And my name is Sergio Pages. I work with a company called Structure Tech. We're a total building envelope company. Envelope means the entire shell of the building to protect it from water intrusion. We've been in business for 30 years. This is our trademark. You know, we provide consulting services primarily for remediating water. My job, the job of my entire company, is to mitigate water from coming into the building. That's what we do. We work all over the country, and obviously we're a Michigan-based company. This is a list of all the districts that we work with. And I also want to highlight our process on how we perform our work. And everything we do in our company has a process. The first step is we do an assessment. We try to find out what the problem is, what the source of the water is. And sometimes it's because there's a situation, or sometimes it's just preventative, just planning ahead. I'll explain that a little bit later. And then once we have an evaluation situation, then we come up with a design. We work with a contractor, and then we monitor what the contractor is doing. So there's always a very strong evaluation, a good design, and then there is a team that is monitoring, making sure that everything is being done in accordance to the design, the original design. I put this slide because one of the, if you think about in the since May, we have been feeling that there's been doing a lot of rain, you know. So part of the situation that we're experiencing here is that we did have some leaks, but then because of the amount of rain that we received, everything has been just multiplied. You know, everybody's hyper about this. And I'm describing not just us here, but for example, I have a similar situation in Novi where we actually had to troubleshoot, do some leak testing in the last few weeks. I was at the Detroit Medical Center. We had some major floodings there. I'm in the middle of mitigating that. If any of you work there, it's been very problematic. So yes, in fact, we've had an extraordinary amount of rain in the last few weeks, and therefore, you know, things have heightened, and that's why we're really concerned here. A little bit of history. We have been managing a roofing program for Rochester schools, and what you see here is the cover sheet of a report that we put together back in 2016, where we did an assessment on all the roofs for the district. Okay, what does that mean? At every one of these schools, we evaluated their roofs to see what condition they were in, and then we developed a plan where we told Rochester, here's your priorities. This is what you should spend the bond money you're going to be getting to do either roof replacements, roof repairs, or any other type of work that deals with the roofing systems. So the programs that we develop, and we do this for every district, or many districts in the state of Michigan, including other states. The first thing is to prioritize. We can't do everything, so we have to start with what's worst. You know, and then systematically go and start, you know, every year doing a program. The other objective is to reduce costs. Okay, so what we do is we team up with Frank Greenwald as an example, and then we bid out multiple roofs for the district. So we may bid out 5, 10 different schools, and that allows us to get very good pricing, because the more you bid, the better pricing you get from good qualified contractors. The other aim that we have is sustainability. What does that mean? It means that if we're going to replace a roof, we want to make sure that roof lasts no less than 20 years, and that it's watertight, weathertight, because otherwise you have to keep spending money and if it's not done properly. So those are the 3 objectives. And then anytime we do a program, the first is, okay, is there any roofs that are really at the end of their lives? You know, we just can't repair it anymore. We have to replace it. So that's considered major capital. There might be some roofs that are in pretty good condition, but just like a car, even though your car is running well, you do have to change the oil. You have to maintain it. So we recommend strategic maintenance so that they're coming every year, inspecting the roofs and make sure that the maintenance is being put together. And then the last one is called deferred capital, and there might be roofs that are right in the middle. In other words, they're not necessarily ready to be replaced, but we can do certain things to it to extend the life of them, and then push it until we get more funding and we can continue the program. This is just a quick example of the program. And the reason I share this is because every roof that we inspect gets an index. It's kind of like a scorecard, like A, B, and C, or green, red, or yellow, meaning what's the priority. The code that we use, or the score that we use, is called the roof condition index. So anything that's below a 30, it's a very poor condition. We're telling you this, you need to replace that as soon as possible. As soon as possible might be between the next year to 3 years. And then in the meantime, you can maintain it. Anything that's in 50 to 85, we can extend the life and add some aggressive repairs. And then anything that's in the hundreds, a pretty new roof, but we still have to put some funding there. This is a definition of that index. All of our teams are professionals. They're trained to understand roofs. We actually carry tablets where we fill all that information. And then it gets back to the office, and then we looked at it as a team. So it's not just one individual. There's always several people looking at the data, so that when we hand it to the owner, they know it's been checked by everybody. Yes, sure. This particular report was in 2016. Sure. I'll have to get back to you. I can't recall. No. Yeah.
I can tell everybody here about our company,
Okay.
about our neighbor, so let's move right up to the leakage, which is
Okay.
around the time.
Sounds good.
We got a limited amount of time.
Excellent. This is the scorecard for the entire district. This is this week. This is the rating. Okay, in colors. This is brand new, actually, in the last few weeks. Yes. So anything you see in green. Correct. Correct. Yes.
But that was 2016?
Yeah.
And there's going to be another one every year though, for when you say that it goes against an elevator inspection? So that's what I.
So in 2016, as part of the bond work, right, Structure Tech team did to complete an assessment on all of the roofs, right, so that we could prioritize bond work and what roofs needed repairs. The Long Meadow roof was not a critical need, right? Sergio and Structure Tech rated that roof as having 5 to 7 years of lifetime, if I remember accurately. So,
Yeah.
So, yeah, these guys do, but what I'm trying to do is establish context here, right? So, because, I mean, if you wanted to cut to the chase, the roof isn't leaking. The re-seamed part of the roof is working. The part of the roof that they called for to be replaced is fine. And the part of the roof that did not need to be replaced is fine. What we found out through and the assumption was the leaks would be gone. The roof's tight. So we've got some coping issues, and we've got some fern codes. And so you asked where this information is available. Lori, if you could give it to Jen and help him with our website so we can find that information and find where the roof assessment is. But all of the information that we've given you that we've sent home with you, sent through email, is on the front page of the Long Meadow webpage, okay? It's attached to it.
The memory is good, and the skill is good. We're looking at aerospace panels, flashings.
Correct, and I'll get to that, yeah. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
sorry.
I disagree a little bit, right? We have a presentation, I understand that you have a level of expertise. Now, I want to make sure that for those here in attendance, that they understand the full context of and right, and we'll have time for questions, but we're trying to finish this presentation. We want to have time for questions. I know that Sergio is going to be late for a meeting that he needs to start at 7, but we're going to answer questions. But let's please give the man the ability to finish the presentation. I know we have questions, we have concerns, we have frustrations. We want to get to that, but please let's do the presentation.
I'll move through, but I want to make sure I'm going to answer your question. It's very important for you to ask, but I'm not going to do it right now. Just give me a minute, yeah? Okay, so this is their latest update on the roof, and just to give you an example, okay, there's actually, even though it seems like just one roof on top of this, there's 25 roofs, okay? So what I have here is just a snapshot of one roof, okay? Roof area number 1, and you can see it here delineated. When we review the roof, and I'm answering this because it was an actual question on the internet, they asked us, how detailed is your assessment? So I need to add and answer that. Okay, here's just roof area number 1. We reviewed the surface, and here's all the conditions that we found. This is in 2016. Here's the condition of the membrane, the actual rubber. It's called EPDM in our language. This is all the perimeters. Perimeters meaning all the connections between the roof, the walls, the different pipes that are on top of the roof. Everything was itemized. All the equipment, the drainage system, and here's the recommendations that we gave at that time. Okay? This is, again, all the roofs for Long Meadow. As you can imagine, I have 25 roofs just on Long Meadow. So across the entire district, we have over 1,000 roofs that we have to look at systematically. Okay? So the point in this is that we need to give the district data to manage this amount of roofs. And that's just roofs. I mean, you have the mechanical systems, the carpets, and so on. So over 1,000 roofs that we have to manage. But we have a very strong program. That's what I'm here to tell you, that we have a strong program to manage them. Now the next question is, what kind of work was performed on these roofs, and why are some of those green now? Okay? This is the actual drawing that was used by Frank Rewald and the roofer to perform the work this year on all the roofs in this school. Okay? I'm going to highlight this summer. This is completed. Okay? I'm going to highlight the part that deals with the repairs. We re-seamed the existing interior EPDM roofs. Back in 2016, some of those seams were loose. We didn't do a lot of work throughout those years. However, when we came back, they were still fine. And that's because even though I'm telling you it has 5 years of life, sometimes when you come back, you realize, it's not that bad because it's so weather dependent. It's a moving target, so you have to keep an eye on it, but they weren't that bad. So therefore, we came back and did some re-seaming. Re-seaming means that there's an overlap between two membranes, and you re-seam it because they're starting to loosen up, and that's where water can get in. Okay? So we did a lot of re-seaming, and then some areas of the roof were actually replaced. That's why I mentioned, I'm going to go back here, that for example, these roofs were replaced. Okay? So going back to this, here's a report. This is what we're hired to not only the contractor is performing the repairs according to what we told them that they should do it. Do we trust that contractor? No, you do trust him, but I don't know if you ever heard this term, trust but verify. Trust but verify. So we come back and inspect what they've done. This is just one field report that I have from, I don't know, probably 100 field reports that I have technicians that are checking the work. Okay, so there's checks and balances. Here's where the roof was repaired. Here's another repair, and so on. You know, everything is documented. And once that report is completed, we have 2 signatures for everything. So there's trust but verified, but also verified really well. I have to have 2 sets of eyes to confirm that the work was done correctly. Next, as Kerry said, there's water leakage. We're called and we're asked, can you please find this leakage? I got called 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and I was told, I need you to come immediately. And obviously nowadays it's really difficult. So we brought a team on Monday last week, and we had them do a water test procedure. The reason I'm highlighting this is because we do follow an ASTM standard. I appreciate your comments about following standards, where my team knows exactly how to test certain parts of the building where the leakage is. The results of the test, and I have a table where I have all of this itemized that I have to get 2 signatures, like I said, vet it out and present it to my client, which is Rochester Schools. We perform water tests in 24 areas, very specifically to the courtyard, because that's where room number 12 is. So we wanted to know, hey, where's the water coming from? We found 7 locations. That's what you're looking for. 7 locations. Now, 2 of them we know what to do. The other 2 we don't, because, and I'll show you in a minute, there are concealed conditions. There's things that we can't see. And like I said before, it's been so much rain lately that what you can't see really shows up with all this rain that we've had. So we're going to actually perform some exploratory. So what does that mean? We're going to actually open up the wall and the interface with the roof and see why is it that it broke down. Okay, that's something that we do all the time, so we can troubleshoot it. Great question. November 2nd. November 2nd. Okay. The rest of the water testing, but just so you know,
We gotta do water testing, there's no case.
yeah, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
What they found in the area where the roof was replaced, or where the roof was not replaced, just seams that were replaced.
Actually, we didn't find it in the roof at all. It actually is at the interface. This is an example. Okay, here's the roof. Here's the intersection of the wall. And as you can see, what we do is we put plastic in one area, we test it, and then we remove that plastic and test another area until we find exactly where the water is coming in. Okay? So this is telling us that there is a problem between the coping and the interface with the wall. This is very common. It's unfortunate, but it's very common. You know, you're trying to be there 100% of the time. But, you know, who knows where somebody woke up that day and didn't do something underneath there, we can't inspect it. You know? That's one possibility. Another possibility is just the material broke down inside and we can't see it. But what we're going to do is we're going to do exploratory openings to do that on November 2nd. And just so you know, I already talked to Peter, and we're going to do this proactively even before that, so that by November 2nd, we're going to actually have some of the repairs done, and then we're going to water test the repairs right away so that we don't, we certify that this is done properly. It's just another picture of the water test as it was being placed. Yeah, I don't have a map, but I can tell you physically we did this area.
That picture you see there is from,
Yeah. Yes, which is the majority. That's the big problem. We're going to test all the areas that we've been told on November 2nd.
Isn't that the oldest part of the building though? Isn't that the oldest section around that that was built in the 60s?
It is, that's it.
It's a question, we'll write that down and get that back to you, because this building was built in multiple stages. I believe the last time it was added on to was 2001, but it's long, way before my time. I don't, Mike, take a stab at it? No? Okay.
That'd just be interesting to know.
Yeah, I think part of what I'm learning is with these parapets and the coping is that any time you add it from from one place onto the next, and you've got, so when you go up here on the roof, so what you can't see under the plastic is, so, yeah, there's a, this is a cap of a brick wall, and there's another piece of metal that's up in here, and there's caulking that's in here. One of the things that was a vexing challenge for us was the weather. So we had to get Adam up on the roof, our maintenance guy that takes care of our wood roofs, and to be able to caulk it. You can't put caulking in a pouring rain. We did for an immediate mitigation to stop the water, but the reality is we needed a longer term fix, and that's what we're doing now. The good news is, in the last rain, we had no leaks. Casey and I talk, we're rain buddies now. We talk every time it rains. So the bad news is Sergio says all the time, water always wins. So we just got to keep on this until we can mitigate it.
I want to say something about him, okay? My guys call me and say, there's this guy that's looking at this, and this is very rare. I mean, I work with a lot of districts who just don't get his level of person to describe what I just did, because he's actually hands-on, and I appreciate that. Every time an owner is hands-on, we can be more clear about things. Okay, this is just a sketch. You know, we're actually going to design something so that we can make sure it's mitigated properly. In addition to that, we also did an infrared scan. An infrared, if you've seen military movies, you know, you can see the heat. Well, we use that technology to do a complete survey of the roof. I'm not going to say it's exactly like an X-ray, but it's similar, and it will tell us if there's any water that got inside the middle of the roof, the actual insulation. We did that last night. Then this afternoon, Casey, assuming you saw the guy, or maybe they didn't tell you, there was a guy here who did some test cuts, because we need to verify, even though the camera gives us the information, I trust the camera, but I have to verify, so I have to do some test cuts to confirm that water is in there. If we do find water, it's usually in small areas, and then we can actually have the contractor cut it out, replace it, and then tie it in with the entire roof. And we're in the process of compiling that report. But that was done last night, okay? Because it has to be done at night. The camera only works in the evenings. So finally, this is I mentioned the roof scan was done. On November 2nd, we're going to do additional water testing, exploratory openings. Now, what I did this morning is I talked to my technicians and I said, we usually, the typical process is that we do all of this, and we give somebody a report, and they go and get the money, and they repair it. Well, I figured we don't have time for that, let's just fast track. So I talked to Peter this morning, and I said, can we get a contractor to come and do the repairs that we're going to tell them? And then can you get your team to do some exploratory openings for us before the 2nd? So my hope is that by the 2nd, we'll have like 50-70% of this solved, at least the areas that we found. And then the last step is, which you actually saw a glimpse of it, that new drawing that I was telling you. It's brand new because we are updating the plan. Frank Rewald just replaced a number of roofs. Now we have to update the system and then determine what we're going to do next year. Okay, because that's the program. Yes, ma'am. The leaks were found on Monday last week. Not yet. That was the scan, yeah. Actually, very good question. In order for the infrared to work, we can't have rain. That's the opposite of what you're saying, because if I have water, then the camera can't work. It's got to be dry. So it just happened that we had 2-3 days of dry weather, and we were able to scan. It's really hard to like after November, we can't scan anymore because it's too cold. At least the roofs, the walls we can. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, I apologize. Yeah. She asked. Oh, you did. Moving forward. Moving forward, okay, good. Any other questions? We don't have that in our scope, but if it's necessary, we can do that. Yeah, that's something we do quite often. So, yeah.
I do have a question. You're talking about this like weather dependent and everything, but we had last summer we had extreme heat and it was very dry. And
Mhm.
this summer it's been extremely hot. We
Mhm.
had a lot of rain and everything. So with the building being empty for several months due to COVID and stuff, all that the little rain we got, and last year I don't remember getting so much rain, but like the water was just sitting there, not being taken care of, well, the classes were all empty, so stuff was just sitting there. Why didn't you guys inspect the roofs when no kids were here, when the classrooms were empty? Why is it taking us being vocal about it to get you guys to come and survey?
So I'm asking that, like, now that, when the last year, when the kids were not at the school, why weren't you guys surveying the roof at that time when it was dry? There was very little rain, but you guys are supposed to take care of our roofs and inspect the roofs. Why weren't you guys doing that at the time? Why is it now that we're being very vocal about it and complaining because our kids are in a not such a safe environment? I mean, yes, it's safe, but hold 1 second, please. But now that we're being vocal about it, you guys are now inspecting the roofs, and you're being more proactive about it. I don't understand.
Yeah, we have been inspecting all the construction of work this summer. So we have been inspecting all the construction of the work throughout the summer. Yeah, go ahead.
Remember, the roof was scheduled to be replaced, the roof that was replaced. Right.
It's not the stuff that was replaced, is what I'm saying. It's
No, the roof isn't leaking.
Not now, because everything's
Right. Well, but the issue that we have to mitigate now is the coping, I can't remember the technical term for it, the flashing and the fern coats. The roof isn't leaking.
But is that part of everything that was just replaced this summer, or is it part of the other stuff that has not been replaced?
I don't think I understand your question.
What part, what picture, that picture right there, is that something you guys just replaced this summer?
Yeah.
So we repaired and replaced. I'm not sure exactly if this roof was replaced, but the point is that this roof is not leaking. What's leaking is the connection here. And throughout this last year or two, this is particular to this particular building. These are extremely difficult to troubleshoot because it depends.
This is not start this year, this has been going on for years, because that mold and that stuff, the growth that we have, has been going on for a while. So this is stuff that's been happening over the past couple of years. If you guys are supposed to be maintaining our roofs and making sure that, not just the roofs, but every aspect of the stuff that's on top of us right now, then why have you done such a poor job of maintaining our children and our staff?
Well, the main thing is we're inspecting them, okay, and then we instruct the roofers to maintain it. In this particular situation was identified throughout the inspection, because when you walk by this and you look at it, unless you open it up, which we can't do, we don't know what's going on in
This
there.
is one spot of 7.
Mhm.
But there was multiple prior to you guys redoing the roof and the other structure, whatever you wanna call it. Okay. If you guys are being contracted to fix something, to maintain something,
Mhm.
why is it now that you guys are fixing and maintaining it, but I know you guys have had a contract for at least 4 years.
Mhm.
You outbid my ex-husband's company. So I know for a fact you guys have had for at
Mhm.
especially classrooms, is very cool.
Mhm.
So now you guys are coming out of her, now that we're speaking up and saying something about it, because our core teachers are dealing with this, and our wonderful principal is backing us all up. Like, I'm sorry, I think you guys have dropped the ball.
Mhm.
Yeah, all I can say is, we are directed, we're asked, please check this, and that's what we did. We're asked, can you please inspect the situation? Mhm. Sure, yes.
That's really what I was saying.
And then interior, you do want to test inside, inside the CMU, doing thermal readings, so let's see if I can improve it.
Yeah. Correct.
Why is it that you don't go around and test every single area, which was not the place or worked on previously last about 4 months, let's say? Why not check every area, make sure all the building, all the light, everywhere is all good? If there's any single area, let's go fix it, rather than doing spot check one at a time and then waiting for a rainy day, or another snowy day, or something that needs somewhere else down the road.
We did inspect all the roofs, but this particular area was, it showed up with the latest rains. And you're right, maybe it was showing up before, but, we were not informed that this was happening. I guess that's what I can say. Now that we are aware of it, we come in and troubleshoot it. I think an idea and suggestion moving forward is that when there's leaks, we can actually map them to the particular roof and then have a more proactive approach as your suggestion. So. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The problems that we found so far, probably 80% of them will be fixed by November 2nd. Okay? And November 2nd, we're going to test other areas, and then we're going to open up certain areas that we couldn't see behind it, and then we'll make the repairs right after that. My hope is that moving into when the weather hits, everything will be repaired and taken care of. Yes? Yes.
Maybe you said this, but how often do the inspections occur as a routine at RCS versus like other school districts?
Typically, we do a full inspection, because remember, there's 1,000 rows every 5 years. That's the norm. And it's kind of an industry approach. But in the meantime, the maintenance team for Rochester is inspecting it every year. Usually they inspect it right before the winter and then in the spring. And then they get calls on leaks, because like Bob was saying, it's almost impossible to have no leaks in a building. They do happen. Water always wins. You got to find ways to mitigate it once you find them. So, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I guess the question that I have, the district's been doing a great job of putting information out there. I know there's a lot on our school website. Can we continue to have documentation on the full scope of testing that has been done and will continue to be done, so that we can understand what's been looked at, what the results are, and what the next planned course of action is? And maybe it's a continual approach, so I understand that structured tech is working on the physical components of the building, and then once that's resolved, maybe then we can understand what NOVA will be doing in the future, so that we can understand how the remediation has been effective.
We certainly will continue to keep informed the developments of the roof, and I think maybe we missed it when we were kind of transitioning. We are going to do a clearance test once we're sure we've got these 7 identified areas. We'll do a clearance test, and NOVA will do that. But again, this is kind of I don't know, I can't even think of an analogy that works works anymore. There's so many words that are trite these days, right? But this is an interesting run for us, because again, as we know, there were leaks in this building, and we thought the roof repairs were going to take care of them. Unfortunately, and I'll take responsibility for it, I guess, we did not expect there to be coping problems like there was. It did not, the leaks that we were seeing didn't indicate coping, it indicated roofing issues. So there's a couple of things that we work on moving forward. Number one is to figure out what we want to do with services in the building. That's something that we're going to work on as a community and as a staff. First and foremost, though, is to get these water testing done, get the results in the infrared testing, and figure out if there's anything that we need to do further inspection, tear into that. So the roof has a metal deck, right? It's got insulation, and then it's got a membrane on it. So what we're trying to figure out with the infrared right now is if the membrane between the deck, if the insulation between the deck and the membrane got wet. If that's the case, we've got a whole different issue, and that'll involve a roofing contractor. It could involve the insurance. It's a multitude of things that could involve it. But right now, our plan is to get these 7 areas mitigated. If we identify any more of the water testing, we'll attack them, because we need to get them done before winter. And then once we're sure we're buttoned up, we'll do some clearance testing and make sure that our air quality is good. And I want to reiterate that in room 12, Casey did exactly what should have been done. He acted and he got rid of it. Now, for those of us that would have liked to know exactly what it was, maybe we would have liked to have seen what was actually there. But we can't do that. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter, because the EPA says when you see it, get rid of it. So I guess what I need you to know is we're attacking this as aggressively as we possibly could. We assumed, probably wrongfully, that the roof was going to take care of any leak in this building, and we repaired it, and we found out that we had some coping issues and some Furnco issues. We're attacking them aggressively.
Let's see, yes. I got 2 questions. So I think I understood on September 29th, a report was done and we found out black mold was in 3 rooms. We just found that out on a bottom of the website PDF. Never emailed, never communicated to us. I just want to know, is that acceptable communication? Number 2, can you talk about the black mold that was found and how it was properly remediated?
Yeah, so I can't remember the school calendar at that time, but when we found it, I believe we were up against the PD day on the weekend, so we had the weekend to clean it. And again, the quantity of it was such, with Carrie's recommendation, that we cleaned it. And again, we did not feel it was a safety issue. All I can tell you is, again, like I started at the beginning of the meeting, I'll accept responsibility. I'm not perfect, I don't have a crystal ball, but I will tell you this: I would put my own kids here. I'm in this building constantly. It is safe. Yeah. Yeah, I'll let him speak to that, because we followed his recommendation.
There were 2